At the just concluded NBA Speedel conference in Lagos, some lawyers pushed for the conclusion of election petitions before the inauguration of elected president, governors, and lawmakers in the future. The lawyers said this will ensure the sanctity of the electoral process, decrying a situation where the courts decide leaders of the country as against through the votes of the electorates. Joining us now to discuss the theme of the conference, Post-Election Nigeria, the Judiciary in the Eye of the Storm, and how it relates to our everyday discourse, is Uju Agomoh, Chair, Content Subcommittee of the Conference Planning Committee, CPC, 2023 Nigerian Bar Association Section on Public Interest and Development Law, Speedel, and Ohagba, Chairman, Conference Planning Committee 2023, Nigerian Bar Association Section on Public Interest and Development Law. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dr.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you also, Ohagba, for joining us. Well, quickly, to set the tone for the conversation, the judiciary in the eye of the storm. This is the third day of the conference, closing later today. But what are those emerging issues around the theme, from the contributions in the various sessions? What are those key emerging issues that you think Nigerians should pay close attention to?
Thank you very much, Ruben. I think part of the issues that came out very clearly is that one, it's not just about talking about the judiciary, that we also need to talk about the bar, the lawyers that are the bar, the lawyers practicing. But it's not just about the lawyers, it's also looking about the executive. What is the role of the executive? What is the role of the legislature? So it becomes very clear that we must do everything possible to ensure that the judiciary acts right. But in doing that, there are roles for each and every one of us. That's what's part of some of the things that came out clearly. There were also discussions, when sometimes you say the last hope of the common man is what? The court. It was shocking to hear clearly that it is not the last hope. That we should not think that the last hope it's the judiciary. Because if the judiciary doesn't do the right thing, you'll be shocked what will come after. And for the preservation of everything we all believe in, we must try to act right. Because if you don't act right, you are pushing the public, you are pushing the people, and they will rise up someday. That's something for us to know. And we also talked about the issues about independence of the judiciary. Yeah. They have to be comfortable. Issues about integrity, about trust. So we can't play with this whole subject matter.
Yes. All right, Mr. Ohagba, I'll come to you for the next question with regards to the conversation around petition tribunal timing. Mr. Olisagbakoba SAN had come on the show and talked about the fact that perhaps going forward, the cycle for election petitions should all be concluded before the swearing in of the president. What was the conversation around? What's your take? What's the position, perhaps, from the conference on this matter?
Yes, thank you very much. It's actually, there is need to retool our electoral process. The act, and we need to start from the act itself, because all that will be had to be put into the act, so we can have a system that will be fair to all. I think I agree with past President Abakoba on the need for it will create for more sanity in the system, where we conclude all issues arising from the election before swearing in. But that we need to go back to the Electoral Act and fine-tune it more. You see, the theme of this conference is deliberate also, and in the sense that the elections have come and gone. The task is now before the judiciary. We at Speedel as an advocacy group is putting the judiciary on their toes and reminding them of the need to do the right thing. That Nigerians out there are watching and waiting to see that the right things are done. And when the right things are done, and the right things being done in the general of it includes also the need to retool the Electoral Act also in future elections. Let us conclude issues arising from the elections before swearing in of the candidates.
All right, so I have a quick question for both of you. I'll come to you first, Ma. Number one will be about the Bukachua issue. After the revelation made at the valedictory service of the House, she's come out to say she did nothing of such. But people are looking and saying, it's not just by a rebuttal that we did something. What's the investigation even into the cases or cases handled by her in the past to be able to look at this matter critically?
Yeah.
Because that's a big indictment, you know, on our judiciary. And it is sad, and I'm sure issues like that, people just look at it. And you see, because what we fail to realize is decay comes systematically. The decadence in our society today didn't happen 5 years ago, didn't happen 10 years ago. It happened over 20, 30 years ago. And when people see this, they form their opinions. But it is also when people see justice that it can hither to shift that confirmation bias they have. Yeah. So the confirmation bias now as regards the judiciary is that it's not the hope of the common man any longer. I mean, what's your take about this Bukachua case? I'll ask you first and I'll come to you, sir, afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed. You know, I always like to look at issues from a holistic perspective. So I think it needs to trigger first an independent evaluation and assessment of everything she has sat to judge. But it's not just about her. Think about it. If somebody didn't make a confession or didn't say, would you be doing this? So why don't you see this as opening the box? Why don't you see this as putting checks and balances where there need to be constant review, not only about judicial judgment, but also administrative decision-making processes? It is important because the truth of the matter is this. You know, you can tell people do something that is right. The only incentive they can have to do those things right, why? Listen, it's when they know that if they don't do it right, they'll be caught. So it's the same way when you say to people, if you violate this particular offense, this is your sanction. But when there is no certainty of the fact that you'll be caught, certainty of the fact that when you are caught, you'll be prosecuted, certainty of the fact that when you are prosecuted, you'll be found guilty if truly you were guilty, certainty of the fact that you will be sanctioned and you will serve that sanction. So that's the point. So people think they can do anything and get away with it. The concept of impunity. So I hereby say that it's not just about her. We do it for her, but we do it for all the log. We do it and make sure we put in place clear systems that will make sure there are checks and balances, and that no matter what you do, we'll come back to it. And that would then deter people. And I believe that we should not trivialize this. As you said, it's right.
No, NGC has not even said, let's review the cases.
That was said. I mean, I think this was also part of the issue that came up at the conference.
NGC has not said anything.
We need NGC to speak. We need this to be done. So, you are right. But I also like the point you made that this is an incremental process. And for God's sake, we really need to make sure that we shield the judiciary from this bastard act of everybody kicking, everybody, you know, when we pull it down, you know, it's not just this incident. I'm sure you also heard where somebody was asked, how come, what was it that you did, how come you're here? Yeah. And he said, how is the court here? That is also another indictment. So I think that
was to the Senate President. The question Rocha Sokorocha asked is, how did you get here? And we all remember those two judgments. One with the incumbent Senate President, another one with Hackman Lawan, the former Senate President. You know
what pains me, listen, it's because if only we can understand that we are not doing another, but we're doing ourselves. If only we can understand that, you see, part of what happens is just like when you see somebody being carried to be, buried. You may not care about it, but that person is somebody's family, and tomorrow it can be you. So again, I want to use this platform to plead for God's sake that we should save the soul of this nation. We're not doing it. So I agree, it is incremental, but we must do something. At a point, we must say, no, we can't continue this way.
Sir, how about you, sir? As regards this
the image of the judiciary is at its lowest ebb at the moment in the country. And some people call the comment by Senator Bukashua, some people call it a careless slip. But I see it as a confession. It's a confession, and it is a call. Maybe it's an avenue for the judiciary to sit itself up. The NJC has a task on its hand, and I believe in actions. In this case, the NJC's silence can never be golden. I think the NJC immediately needs to swing into action in this particular instance. Set up a committee, review all past judgments of my lord, and be sure that the right things are done. You see, we must take action in all cases. The moment we will start taking actions, that is when Nigerians can see that, yes, the judiciary is doing the right thing. In this particular instance, the NJC must take action, and Nigerians are waiting to see the action the NJC is going to take on it. Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, I will come to you, and then I have a question for you also, Doctor. Now, one of the issues at the conference is about ethics in the Temple of Justice. So, Chairman, maybe you want to start with that and address the subject, judges abusing expert emotions, lawyers bringing frivolous and vexatious matters and wasting the time of court and all that. What can be done about ethics? And when Chairman is done, I noticed that Section 6 is about administration of justice, particularly Section 12 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act. And you are here. You are the #1 prison reform activist in Nigeria. I want you to help us link, the two in terms of custodial centers and administration of justice. Chairman, you go first.
Thank you very much. There is a way forward already. The rules of professional conduct has just been repealed, and that is for ethical conduct of lawyers. I believe that is being taken very seriously by the NBA President YC Michael SAN. On the part of the judges, I believe that there is this generalization that all judges are corrupt. I don't believe that. There are good judges. There are ones who are not corrupt. So I believe that the judiciary, which the NJC is the body who sanctions, who makes laws, and who oversees the actions of these judges, must set in motion reforms to ensure that the corrupt ones, or find a way of rehabilitating, if I use that language, overhauling the judiciary to see that issues of corruptions are dealt with. The bar on its part, with the new RPC, I believe the bar will take ethical cases very seriously. So I think with that, the issues of ethical values in the Temple of Justice will be seriously dealt with. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Agomoh. The emphasis on Section 12 of the
Nigerian Correctional Service Act. Okay.
2019.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ruben. Yes, when you go to Section 12, subsection 4 to 12 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019, there were very critical things that were done by that section. And clearly what that section was trying to do was to kind of align itself to the provision of Section 2, subsection 1 of the Act, which states about the objectives. So if you look at that Section 2, sub 1, it talks about, 1, the need to align the practices in Nigeria with correctional best practices and international human rights standards. The second, talking about the effective implementation of non-custodial by providing that platform. The third, talking about the notion of reformation, rehabilitation, and reintegration. And the fourth, and this fourth is very important, talking about establishing a systemic and institutionalized and sustainable mechanism to deal with the high number of persons who have been convicted, the pre-trial persons. So when you go to that section 12, subsection 4 down, it provided, one, an early warning signal. Because you and I know that the biggest problem that the Nigerian Correctional Service is having has to do with overcrowding. And it's not overcrowding in all the 244 centers. No. It is overcrowding, especially in the cosmopolitan areas. So all the facilities that you have in the cosmopolitan areas, most of them are overstretched. And by the time you have high number, close to 70%, that you have not been convicted. And many of them stay higher number of time to be there. Then the whole notion of getting more criminalized becomes there. So section 12, what it says in subsection 4, it says whenever the facility, the correctional center, is being about to be overcrowded, because each center has a designated population. So it says that the officer in charge, the superintendent in charge of that facility, or the state controller should set the red alarm and then inform the chief judge, prerogative of mercy, and the rest of them, okay? And including the justice sector reform and all that. But when you inform that, you have 3 months. That 3 months enables this whole mechanism to be able to do something to reduce that population. And there are a lot of reasons, not only about money, but expenses on the government and the rest. But so if they don't, within 3 months, do something to reduce that number, then the correctional service should say no, they should not take. And the reason for this is to bring a check and balance. And if they continue, then it should be sanctionable. So the whole notion, and this is really important, because when you talk about checks and balances, that the fact that there are persons who get to be in custody for no just cause. You have people who are innocent, you have people who are minor offenders, sometimes staying longer than they could. So that is really a functional section to help us deal with the provision of subsection sub D of sub 2(1). So section 2 sub 1D is the actual way of activating it. It's provided very handsomely for us under section 12 sub 4 to 12. But the question is, are we implementing it? Which is where the problem is. Because if you don't, it's just like when you look at the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015, section 34 talks about how the judiciary magistrate should go and monitor, let's say, sub-detention like the police stations. So we need to implement these laws. That's the problem. We're not doing it.
All right, let me ask, this question is to both of you. Now, last year at the NBA conference, and I'm bringing it again here this year because it doesn't seem like a lot has changed. And then it begs the question as to, when we have conversations like that, you talk about implementation just now, how do we carry the conversation forward beyond just coming together to speak about this? You, alongside some other lawyers, had spoken to perhaps preferring solutions to undermining of judges in Nigeria. One of the things you had spoken about, or one of the submissions was number one, which has been said a number of times, the separation of offices, Attorney General of the Federation, Ministry of Justice. You also spoke about the independence of the judiciary, particularly in terms of remuneration. And there was a statement around politicians being on the neck of judges, preventing them from actually delivering judgment or sound judgment. I don't think a lot has changed in 1 year since the last conference. Now that we have a new tenure, a new president, are you hopeful? And if there are other things, and this question is for both of you, in terms of strengthening the judiciary, because we can complain about the fact that, we don't have confidence in the judiciary, it's no longer the last hope of the common man, but there are also issues that have to be addressed in terms of not undermining the judiciary in Nigeria.
I like the way you ask this question, because it's almost like saying, we're talking. When can we start acting? When can we really start making a difference? And that's why I like it. So, yes, you're correct. There's a lot that has said needed to be done, but it haven't been done. So the question is, do we then do nothing because the ones we said we should do something about we have not done? My response would be no. So we will keep pushing. But again, I really feel very convinced that there is a critical problem. I will say, and I was just discussing with somebody a while ago about the same issue. I will say the technical word and I break it down. I think this is at the heart of the bulk of the problems that we have. It is a lack of conscientization, and let me explain what I mean by that. A lot of times we talk about there are problems. Oftentimes I ask, truly, do we really know the root causes of our problems? Because we need to. It's not symptomatic things. We can't just be talking about only the symptoms. We really need to dive deeper to understand what is causing what. Till we get to that root cause, that's number one. The second level, we need to also articulate the solutions that will make the clear impact. Again, not symptoms. It's like when you have malaria, it's just not just by taking the medicine or that thing. You need to deal with what is causing you malaria. So we need to deal with the solution. Now, the third leg is a big issue. What is that third leg? The fact that when you identify the solution, you put yourself as part of that solution. So this is where I come to respond to that question. So they are not responding. There are a lot of things that are not working well. We need to be able to now look at how we cluster those solutions in terms of who need to do what. And then if they don't do it, who need to do what to either name and shame, or to push or to do anything else to get it to done. It's like knowing that every object that stands like this, it will move until there is an extra force. So again, there is a lot of that. Some of the things, like even during our conference, they talked about the INEC, for example. You can't be doing everything. And therefore, if we do that, the question is what will now change? So if the legislature, and I see that the legislature is part of a big issue for us, because I do not believe that the legislature truly understand what role they can play in changing the score. So you have people who are not very much motivated. Perhaps if the result is, if there's not too much incentives, maybe it would be better. But the point is here, there is a lot of roles for the legislature to do. But if the legislature doesn't do it, who else needs to do something? And I want to also commend you, because what you're doing is putting it in the public space so that if they don't do it, keep putting it there. Keep talking about it. Keep speaking. Keep doing. And perhaps when some this way and some out there that are good gets into the places of decision making, they will make decisions. They will make policies. They will make laws that truly represent the public interest, and that's the problem.
Oh, okay. Mr. Ohagba, your take on this?
Thank you very much. I once wrote an article that titled "Tackling Judiciary on Independence in Nigeria," because I don't think we have an independence of the judiciary yet. We are playing lip service to that, as far as I'm concerned. And that's a view I hold very strongly. What we have in Nigeria is judiciary on independence, because if we want to ensure independence, true independence of the judiciary, we must look at the foundation. We must look at the foundation, the appointment, the root of it. Who appoints who? Provided the governor of the state still has powers to appoint the chief judge of the state, provided that the president of the country still appoints the CJN. There is a thin line. There is where you can separate that independence truly. So there's a whole lot needs to be looked at on the appointment process. I think the NJC has a lot on its hand to look at on reforming the judiciary. When you reform the judiciary, that is when you can now have a total independence. Because when you bring those reforms, it will critically touch on the appointment process. By the time we get it right, then we'll be sure that when you talk about true independence of the judiciary, everybody will see that yes, this is a judiciary that is truly independent. When you talk about the need for us to go into implementation, not to come to conferences and talk, and then the next, if after this PDA conference you have SLP, you have another conference again on SBL, we can't be talking. there is need for actions. Today, when we leave here, we are going back to the conference venue to read our communique. From that communique, Spidel asks is that we put the government, the agencies involved on their toes to be sure that these resolutions are followed up with. So we are not going to keep quiet. We are not going to relax that we have issued a communique and it dies there. No, we need to be taking actions, and I believe the president of the NBA is keen on ensuring that we take actions, we take steps to ensure that we implement our resolutions. Okay. But also, let me say this here. There is the need for the president of the country to also give a listening ear to issues on promotion of rule of law. Because if he does not give a listening ear, the more you push, your efforts will become efforts in futility. But we believe that he is a president that will listen to the calls for rule of law preservation in the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I mean, because I think pretty much for the era we have coming to now is a critical case of the dichotomy between the rule of lawyers and the rule of law, as it were. That's where our society is now today. And I say the rule of lawyers vis-a-vis a couple of cases we've seen and the high-handedness of our security authority, keeping people in custody for over a week or two. One comes to mind, the former EFCC chair, also the CBN governor. You have that. And this dichotomy of what ACJA says. I'm sure you'd like to talk as regards that. Secondly, also the case as regards INEC and the elections and the judiciary. I know the case is in court, but the refusal by INEC to be able to support the judiciary sometimes in things requested, and that back and forth, that sort of like that pantomime happening. And thirdly, I'd like to just put this at an addendum. What's the strength of your lobby to be able to get, or your lobbying capacity to be able to get all of these things up and working? Because we cannot remove the rule of lobbying in every society.
That's a mouthful. Okay. So the first point about dealing with time limits in terms of petition it's a constitutional matter. The Constitution tells you that you should do 24, maximum 48 hours, depending on the radius, from where you are to where the court is. But part of the problem is the proviso to that section. And the proviso to that section makes an exception to certain offenses. And this is the reason why if you go, you see a lot of people who are charged for offenses that there are not enough ingredients even of that offense to charge that offense. But the reason they do that is that they want to come within that proviso. So they will give you some kind of bogus charge, offense. But that is not, just because they know that they cannot keep that 48 hours. Of course, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015 and indeed the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of many states, as you mentioned, also puts the time limit. So why are we constantly violating it? And you see, when you talk about rule of law, just a very simple way of understanding rule of law is what? That law is equal for everybody. Equal application of laws.
But in Nigeria, is how best your lawyer is. That's why I say we have gone into the era of rule of lawyer.
That is the bad
is
thing.
Who does your lawyer know?
But which is wrong. And that's why I am pleading, for God's sake, we should not get to that level. We should find a way of getting out of it. We need to get out of it. Because the truth of the matter is this. There is no country that will strive without rule of law. And rule of law has a clear connection with even issues about human rights and the rest of that. So if you do not know how to and cannot obey the law, so it is a different law for a different, it depends on who you know, the money, the whatever, and I will tell you this. I do a lot of training for police officers. We've developed, even from in terms of human rights practices. The same thing, MBA, Spidel, is also very committed to this whole process. But the notion that you will find that sometimes the officers will tell you
that sometimes you are also prevented. For some of them, somebody tell you, it looks like that's your job, you want me to take you out of there? So the point here is that it is something we must protect at all costs. And what this now means, and if you look at the section on public interest and development law, public interest comes in to say that anything that is in the public interest. So if you won't do it, Spidel is here to say it's ready to provide that pattern to deal with that. And you ask the question about lobbying. So I want to put it in a way that I don't want to just use it, but I'd rather talk about strong strategic advocacy. But not just strong strategic advocacy, but I talk about also strategic litigations. Sometimes that is required. But I'm also thinking, because I don't believe that just taking one strategy will get us there. So you if you want to put your lobbying quote, you put it there. Advocacy, you put it there. Strategic litigation, you put it there. What you are doing, public awareness, it has to be added on. But we must get to a point where we cannot just let things go like that. So all of those decisions and recommendations coming out from the community, we need to find a way of operationalizing it. And as I say, part of that operationalizing, it means that you put on something like
the elections real quickly, and INEC can review it. And all
there's something I want to say in the election that we have not said enough, but I will just put it as a flag. But I think we need to do more about it, because I think that is one area that we're not looking at. I fully was involved in monitoring what was happening during this election, all through the night, especially the presidential one, till around 4 a.m. the morning of that. I'm not going to go into details, but this is what I'm going to say. We need to begin to deal with election logistics. You know what? Who handles your sensitive materials? It must be a process that is independent, a process that is not, the time is not going to allow me to go deep into it. So in addition to looking at how INEC is operating, remember that one of the things that was discussed during the election is that we need to onboard. INEC is doing too many things. So we need to make sure that we have the kind of body that will not be put in a form that we are seeing. So we need to be clear which role should be done by which organization, because you cannot be an interested party. So and it's not, even if you are not, you can't act as if it looks like you are. So it must be such that we make it easier. At the moment, the way INEC is configured doesn't make it easier for us to get in that point. And as I said, let's not forget election logistics. We've not visited that point, but that's an issue.
Sir.
Okay, we're talking about public interest law.
I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, talking about the election, in fact, Dr. Uju raised a very important aspect on the issue of elections, and I think it's good we hammer here the need. We have reiterated on that, and we are still reiterating on it. The need to unbundle INEC. There are a whole lot of things that happened during the elections, and though we are not here to pass a mark, because some of these things are already sub judice, but we are calling that the system, there is a serious need to reform the system and be sure that issues like electoral logistics, like Uju pointed out, a whole lot happened. And let me also say this. When Yar'Adua came into office as president, he said the system that brought me in was faulty, and he took steps to change it. So that is what Nigerians are expecting from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to see that the system that brought him into office was faulty. So there is need for him to also champion that drive to reform that system and ensure that you give Nigerians what they deserve, which is a free and fair election. When you vote, your vote must be seen to have counted. Thank you very much.
Okay, public interest law. A public interest matter came up in the course of these election disputes, which is a request by some people that the proceedings should be televised. And then some lawyers are saying, election matters are sui generis. But there's the other argument that election matters should be treated as public interest litigation. And hence, some people say, well, we need to see what is happening in that courtroom so that all of us will be part of the process. What do you think? Has there been any conversation around this at the conference?
Yeah, Ruben, that was part of what was discussed. And I think there was a comment that was made, and I think I want to repeat it. That comment was made at the conference. And it says that the judiciary had the golden opportunity to sell itself to the Nigerian people. The judiciary had the opportunity to let the people know truly that they have the interests of the people. So the court is a public place. But the truth of the matter is, now all Nigerians will not be in that courtroom. Did you remember what happened during Oputa panel? Do you remember what was happening about it?
It was televised.
Yes. So this is what would have happened. Remember that this election witnessed a whole new level of vibrance. People came out. People had hope. People believed. People, especially the young people. So we needed to get, and remember before this time, there was a lot of apathy. People didn't care. Why? Because they kept saying that their votes don't matter. It doesn't care. And this is the point I keep making, and I think it was also very well made during the conference. There is a very strong connection between elections, of course, as a reflection of democracy, and good governance. Why? Because if the people know that the only way they will continue to be in a place of political leadership is to go on doing things that meet the interests of the people. Therefore, because they are interested in election the next time, they will make sure that their policies, their resourcing, and everything is according to what will serve more the interests of the people. But when those who are in those places believe that they don't care, all you need to do is get the talks, buy anybody you feel like you need to buy any institution you think you need to buy from the highest level. Then what it then means is that you don't need to change or improve. And why? All you need to do is service who had brought you in power. So, and the country will keep receding back. So at the end of the day, it is Nigeria that is bleeding as a nation. At the end of the day, and again, perhaps I should say this a little bit open. I think part of what we must understand is that nobody is going to live forever. We have to understand that at least for the grace of trying to make where we are better than what it was when we came, should at least tell us that what is that value you are adding for God's sake. So again, to the point here, we just need to be able to look at a process that will get the people to believe the judiciary. Perception is everything, man. So it's not only for the judiciary to say, no, we are okay. It's not all of us that are like this. The people have to believe it. They need to also build the trust. And trust is not a one-off. It's a process. But that opportunity to have stream live and have the Nigerian people watch and be part of this was a golden opportunity to begin to win that little trust gradually. And because if we'd have gotten there, it would have helped us. I hope someday we'll have another opportunity to do this.
Ohagba, do you agree? And where is the role of justice in all of this? There is rule of law. Do our courts still deliver justice?
The courtroom is a public place. And I do not think that the tribunal needed to wait for a motion from the petitioners before they can innovate that idea of televising the proceedings of the tribunal in this particular circumstance. And they do not also need to wait for the NBA NEC to rise with a resolution asking the NJC to see that the tribunals, particularly the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, televises its sittings. So and all of that were still ignored and and rejected by the tribunal. It's unfortunate. I do not agree with that position, but I am bound by the decision of the court. Yeah. But it's quite unfortunate because that would have also given the judiciary some good image, yes, that they are listening to the yearnings of the people. What is there to hide? There is nothing. It looks as if you don't want the public to see. There is not. I say they don't even need emotion. There is no. You don't need emotion to air the sitting of this. Kenya does it. You know, many countries does. So I don't want to discuss it because I don't see the reason for that motion in the first place and the denial of that motion. But as lawyers, we are bound by the decision of the court. But I personally do not agree with that decision. Thank you.
One word to what Okela just said. It's not just even giving the judiciary an opportunity alone. It is given the executive, it's given the presidency, it's given the whole political class an opportunity to accept the outcome of that election.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Uju Agomoh, and of course, Mr. Ohagba. It's been such a rich conversation this morning coming from the NBA section on public interest and development law.